This time it's really over, everyone. It's almost done for. You can see from the scene, the cars are really piled up. Look at this aisle. Even the aisles are filled with cars. The cars are completely still. We have over 800 cars here. This year, with a price drop in new cars, many people are buying new ones. Our second-hand cars also dropped in price, but very few customers are coming to see them.
This man says that due to the drop in new cars, many people are opting for them, causing a sharp decline in customers for the second-hand car market. There are over 800 second-hand cars piled up on site. Even the aisles are full, and the cars are barely moving. The sales situation for second-hand cars is really bad. It's a disaster. In Shanghai, even the electric cars are not selling. We have over 200 cars piled up at home, and not a single one has been sold since the beginning of the year. Volvos and Teslas with only a few thousand kilometers, and a BYD Han with 10,000 kilometers. Nobody wants them. The electric car market in Shanghai is also facing serious issues with unsold inventory. This woman has over 200 electric cars at home, and none have sold since the start of the year, including brands like Volvo and Tesla.
Since last year, the price of new cars has been dropping continuously, affecting the entire automotive industry. Whether new or second-hand, prices have plummeted. Look here, this is a Zeekr warehouse, and the production is just too much. It's packed with cars. This is just one brand. What happens then? They pass through one owner, become second-hand cars, even if they haven't been used much, with only a few dozen kilometers on them. After passing through an owner, they enter the second-hand market, which is why there are so many cars that haven't been driven, but are considered second-hand.
This man points out that due to overproduction, the entire automotive industry has seen prices drop significantly for both new and second-hand cars. Many new cars are passed through an owner to become second-hand, a few dozen kilometers on them. This results in a market flooded with nearly new second-hand cars. China's electric vehicle market is struggling with overproduction and difficulty selling cars. In response, Chinese manufacturers are trying to increase exports to address the issue. However, data from the China Association of Automobile Manufacturers on July 10th shows that China exported 86,000 electric vehicles in June, a 13.2% drop from the previous month. This marks the third consecutive month of declining exports since March. This trend indicates growing resistance in Europe, which has significantly raised import taxes on Chinese electric vehicles. China's electric vehicle industry faces pressure from the European Union. Since June, the EU has imposed temporary tariffs of up to 37.6% on Chinese-made electric vehicles to counteract unfair subsidies. These tariffs took effect on July 5th. The recalculated tariffs include 17.4% for BYD, 19.9% for Geely, and 20.8% for other cooperative companies. State-owned Shanghai Automotive Group and non-cooperative companies face the highest tariff of 37.6%. The EU's anti-subsidy measures apply to vehicles manufactured in China and exported to the EU, covering brands from Europe, the US, and Japan, including Germany's BMW, which will face a 20.8% tariff. Tesla from the US has requested individual investigation, with tariffs ranging from 27.4% to 47.6%. An unnamed senior official from the European Commission mentioned that these temporary tariffs are not actual cash payments, but are backed by bank guarantees, ensuring retroactive collection once final tariffs are decided. According to EU regulations, the decision to impose formal tariffs must be made within 13 months of the investigation, with a report expected in late August, a ruling by the end of October, and a vote by EU member states in early November. If decided, the tariffs will be imposed for 5 years. In the next 4 months, the EU will continue negotiations with Beijing. The European Commission stated that both sides are engaging at a technical level to reach a WTO-compliant solution that addresses EU concerns. Any negotiated outcome must effectively address the identified harmful subsidies. Additionally, the EU will hold 2 rounds of consultations with member states. Member states can vote to support or oppose the Commission's temporary tariff measures, but these votes are not binding and are intended to provide broad reference for the Commission. Within the EU, countries have differing attitudes toward these tariffs. According to an informal poll by Reuters, most countries are still weighing the pros and cons of the escalating trade dispute. This issue will be submitted to committee members for a consultative vote in the coming weeks, marking the first formal test of support in this landmark case. This investigation was initiated by the EU without industry complaints, making it the first of its kind in trade cases. Ultimately, EU member states will vote in October to decide whether the Commission will propose multi-year tariffs at the end of the investigation. According to regulations, if at least 15 countries, representing 65% of the EU population, vote against it, the tariffs will be blocked. Currently, France, Italy, and Spain, representing 40% of the EU population, support the additional tariffs. Spain's Ministry of Economy stated, "Europe must defend itself if our companies are harmed and do not compete on equal terms." However, the Czech Republic, Greece, Ireland, and Poland are still debating the issue, while Belgium is in a caretaker government status, and the Netherlands has a newly formed government. This means their positions are still unclear. Sources indicate that German automakers sold 1/3 of their cars in China last year, so Germany hopes to cancel these tariffs. Germany stresses the need to resolve issues through negotiations with China. German automakers argue that imposing tariffs is the wrong approach, with negative impacts outweighing the benefits. Opponents claim that increasing the cost for electric vehicle consumers will undermine the EU's goal of achieving carbon neutrality by 2050. Tesla has already indicated it will raise prices. On July 6, the China Association of Automobile Manufacturers, CAAM, issued a statement expressing strong dissatisfaction with the EU's imposition of temporary anti-subsidy tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning also strongly opposed the EU's tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles at a regular press conference on July 5. Mao Ning said, "China believes that specific economic and trade issues should be properly resolved through dialogue and consultation." However, according to a report by Automotive News, the EU's anti-subsidy investigation detailed the specific subsidies received by China's major car manufacturers and the corresponding tariff adjustments made by the EU. This supports the EU leaders' repeated clarification to China that tariffs imposed are not a punishment but a recognition of the unfair price advantage caused by Chinese government subsidies to Chinese car companies. The EU's investigation detailed the various subsidies provided by the Chinese government to Chinese car companies, with many surprising details. The EU report outlined the specific ways in which the Chinese government subsidizes its car companies, such as state bank loans, financing, grants, sales rewards, cheap land for factories, and significant subsidies for battery research and sales. The EU differentiated the levels of subsidies received by different companies to determine the tariffs for each. The report concluded that SAIC received the highest subsidies among all Chinese car companies, amounting to 34.4%. The report broke down SAIC's subsidies as follows: 1.38% from state bank loans, 8.27% from other financing, 8.56% from grants, 2.28% from electric vehicle sales rewards, 0.67% from discounted real estate, 13.24% from battery procurement discounts. In addition, labor costs are a significant factor, as Chinese labor costs are significantly lower than those of their European counterparts. The price difference of over $13,000 between SAIC's MG4 electric car and SAIC Volkswagen's ID3 model reflects SAIC's substantial price advantage over Volkswagen. SAIC was also deemed less cooperative in the investigation, contributing to its additional 37.6% anti-subsidy tariff on top of the 10% base tariff. BYD and Geely were found to receive fewer government subsidies and were transparent during the EU investigation. This transparency, along with their private ownership, resulted in relatively lower anti-subsidy tariffs of 17.4% and 19.9% respectively. In China, state-owned enterprises often have greater advantages in loans, project approvals, and subsidies compared to private companies. However, the report's authors noted that although BYD has its own battery factories, unlike SAIC, the lithium used in BYD's batteries is also subsidized by the government. Before the temporary tariffs were implemented, the EU initiated a customs registration procedure in March to ensure retroactive tariff collection if necessary. These measures had already caused a decline in Chinese electric vehicle exports. According to the China Association of Automobile Manufacturers, China's domestic electric vehicle sales grew by 35.1% year-on-year in the first half of 2024, reaching 4.33 million units. Meanwhile, overall vehicle sales increased by 1.4% year-on-year, reaching 11.25 million units. However, the growth rate of China's electric vehicle market has slowed compared to the 44.1% growth rate during the same period last year. According to a report by Deutsche Welle, studies from institutions like the Kiel Institute for the World Economy and the Austrian Institute of Economic Research indicate that with the implementation of new tariffs, Europe's imports of electric vehicles from China will decrease by 42%. However, the price of electric vehicles in Europe will only increase slightly, by about 0.3% to 0.9%. This is because the reduction in Chinese imports will be compensated by imports from European manufacturers and other third countries. In response to the EU's temporary anti-subsidy tariffs, some major Chinese car manufacturers have started to move production to Europe. For example, Chery Automobile Company Limited, a Chinese state-owned company, has signed an agreement with a Spanish EV manufacturer to establish its first joint manufacturing facility in Europe. Chery is China's largest electric vehicle manufacturer by export volume. BYD, Tesla's biggest competitor, announced in December that it would build its first European production base in Hungary. BYD also announced on July 4th that it has opened an electric vehicle factory in Thailand, its first in Southeast Asia. Furthermore, many Chinese car companies are exploring new markets. Brands like Hosan Auto and Xpeng Motors are opening stores in Africa and the Middle East. BYD has also been expanding into the African market since last year. Against the backdrop of a long-term real estate crisis, slowing economic growth, and a declining population, domestic demand in China remains sluggish. Exports continue to be a key driver of China's economic growth and industrial output. This has intensified conflicts between China and other economies, who fear that the influx of cheap Chinese goods could severely impact local markets. In October last year, before the EU decided whether to impose additional 5-year tariffs on imported electric vehicles, the Chinese government was negotiating with the European Commission. The Chinese government threatened to take retaliatory measures, including filing lawsuits and launching anti-dumping investigations on imports of brandy and pork from Europe. Analysts suggest that although it is uncertain whether Europe will continue with the new tariff measures, the escalating trade tensions are already a significant obstacle. This might force Chinese automakers to diversify their export markets. According to Fitch Ratings, Chinese automakers may increase investments in alternative markets. BYD's main export markets currently include Brazil, Thailand, Israel, Australia, and Malaysia. A Politico report from May this year highlighted that not only are general EV sales in the EU affected, but Europe's electric bus market is also experiencing unfair competition from China. In January, BYD secured a contract worth 43 million euros from Belgian transportation company De Lijn for 92 buses. The deal includes additional terms that could see BYD supplying 500 buses for the company in the future, bringing BYD a net income of 234 million euros. This situation has severe repercussions for Dutch bus manufacturer VDL Bus & Coach and Belgian local company Van Hool, with Van Hool declaring bankruptcy in April this year. A report by Dutch consultancy Shatro CME Solutions shows that last year, the top 12 bus manufacturers in Europe sold a total of 5,107 electric buses, with nearly one-third produced by Chinese companies Yutong, BYD, and Zhongtong, the joint venture between BYD and the UK's Alexander Dennis. Miel Timmers, a spokesperson for Dutch bus manufacturer VDL, stated that BYD receives significant subsidies from the Beijing government, and VDL has been calling for EU action to ensure fair competition for years. However, the European Commission has not yet implemented any specific review measures for the electric bus market. Meanwhile, another risk is gradually emerging. A report by the Eurasia Group last month warned that China's massive shift to electric vehicles could lead to overcapacity in internal combustion engine vehicles, potentially triggering more political and economic consequences. Internal combustion engine vehicles accounted for 78% of China's total automobile exports. The Eurasia Group noted that China's low-cost internal combustion vehicles will be welcomed in some emerging markets, but they will also compete directly with traditional car manufacturers in the West and other regions. The consultancy warned that this will have more direct consequences for automakers outside China, potentially leading to further political tensions. According to Nikkei Asia, China's EV production capacity far exceeds domestic demand, but continues to expand at an astonishing rate. It is estimated that by 2025, there will be nearly 20 million units of surplus capacity, exacerbating global concerns about a price war as Chinese EVs flood international markets. Nikkei Asia pointed out that the automotive industry generally needs a capacity utilization rate of about 80% to break even, but China's new energy vehicles, including EVs, have a capacity utilization rate of only about 50%. Due to overcapacity, several emerging Chinese EV manufacturers have declared bankruptcy. Chinese EV manufacturers can lower costs because the battery supply network is concentrated in China. According to the International Energy Agency, the average price of batteries in China is about 80% of that in Europe and the United States. For Chinese EV manufacturers, steel and other components can be obtained at low costs, and the Chinese government provides substantial subsidies and other support for research and development and factory construction. The low entry barriers to the EV market have led to a flood of Chinese companies joining the production line. According to China's Ministry of Industry and Information Technology, there were over 50 companies manufacturing new energy passenger vehicles in China last year. China's rapidly growing EV production capacity far exceeds domestic demand. Chinese media reports suggest that, based on the plans of car manufacturers and local governments, China's new energy vehicle production capacity is expected to exceed 36 million units by 2025, with estimated annual sales of about 17 million units, resulting in nearly 20 million units of surplus capacity. Some Chinese manufacturers believe that increasing exports to Europe and Southeast Asia could solve the overcapacity crisis. An Automotive Industry Association statistics show that China's EV exports surged by 78% in 2023, reaching 1.2 million units, with some predicting that this number will reach 3.5 million units next year. Global vigilance towards Chinese EV manufacturers is growing, with many countries imposing measures like tariffs to protect domestic industries from unfair competition. Professor Xie Tian from the School of Business at the University of South Carolina stated that Chinese-made EVs still face at least 3 major hurdles globally. 1. Loss-making business. Issues related to cost, price, and subsidies. 2. Low value. Issues related to technology, safety, quality, brand, and trust. 3. National reputation. The effect of national origin, with China's global reputation being tarnished by the actions of the Chinese Communist Party. He said these hurdles involve a range of issues, including corporate profitability and government subsidies, product quality and reliability, consumer trust and doubts about Chinese products and brands, after-sales service, and automotive dealer networks, as well as national reputation. Professor Xie indicated that Chinese automotive industry managers might be rushing to jump on the EV bandwagon, driven by the Chinese authorities' short-sighted and heavy-handed subsidies. The underlying reason for the Chinese authorities' short-sighted approach, Xie believes, is the sluggish Chinese economy and the bleak prospects for short-term recovery. This is also a reflection on the declining power of the Chinese regime.